Hey everyone, welcome to another G News podcast. Today we are joined by Helen White, who is the current MP for Mount Albert and Labour's spokesperson for the prevention of sexual and family violence. Helen is a barrister with 25 years' experience in employment law and has become a leading voice in advocating for workers' rights. Hey Helen, welcome to G News.
Kia ora. It's lovely to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
It's really good to have you. Tell us, first of all, about your work as the MP for Mount Albert so far.
Well, it's actually been an incredible experience. I didn't kind of know how wonderful it would be moving from being a list MP to a constituent MP, but it helps that I've lived here for a long time. I've actually lived in the area for well over 35 years. So I've brought up my kids here, I've juggled the career and the family life here. They've all been to the local schools. My marriage broke up here. I'm in the same house that I was in when we first moved into the area, which I'm incredibly grateful for. So I know my neighbours really well and I know people in the community. But being the MP, it just opens a world of connections. And so you really deepen your relationships, and I absolutely love it. I think also Mount Albert has a special character, and it's a place where actually every walk of life lives. That's pretty cool.
What issues have been coming up the most in your role?
Actually, they're really full on at the moment in terms of two things. One is people losing their jobs or not being able to get them. That's huge. It's impacting really severely in this community. And the other is actually the price of things. I hate using words like cost of living because they sound like they come from Wellington, but it's things like the price of butter, it's the price of vegetables, it's all the kinds of basics. Energy's huge. So it's all that stuff that ordinary New Zealanders need, and it is really, really severe at the moment.
From what you have been hearing, how is your community in Mount Albert coping under this national government?
I actually think it's been kicked in the guts. It's pretty bad. Things like wages just haven't gone up. So if you're lucky enough to have a job, then your wages are just not keeping pace. And then there's a lot of people who they were moving into employment and those opportunities have gone. So they've got little contracts. So they'll get a contract, then they'll be unemployed. Then they'll get a little contract. Nothing is really meaning that anyone's got any security, and that's incredibly stressful. And I've got areas that are plunging. So there's an area called Wesley, which is coming into the electorate because of boundary shifts. And it was going to have a rebuild. It was going to have 11,000 affordable homes in it. That stopped, and it's affecting things like the schools because the kids moved out of the area because there was going to be a rebuild and it was promised they could move back in. They're never coming back. So I've got one school that's down to 109 on its roll. And so you kind of get this ripple through your community because schools are incredibly important to the security that people feel in the community they feel. And it's a great school. It's just having a really hard time.
How does your background in employment law equip you to represent people at a time of rising unemployment under national?
I think it sort of speaks for itself there in the question. I mean, it's exactly on point. When I was an employment lawyer, I chose the field because I'd been doing all sorts of things and I just felt like the jobs that people have, they're the most important empowering thing you can do. And they actually empower people on benefits too, right? It keeps everything going if there are people in paid work and they can get ahead. And so I know what it's like for someone to lose their job. I dealt with like a lot of redundancies in my life, a lot of job losses, and I had to deal in my early career with things like the closing down of the meatworks. And since that, we've had things like the closing down of half of Kinleith. Those are my people, I know them. I literally know them. And I know how important those jobs are to whole communities. They're the things that really mean the whole community buzzes. it pays for the cafes, it pays for the kids' uniforms, all that's gone. And a lot of those sort of high paid jobs and things like industry, they've just stagnated and people are going overseas. And at a personal level, I mean, I'm not impacted by this stuff. My own children, two of them are overseas. One of them, she was coming back from England and she was supposed to be coming back for good and she just couldn't find a job here. She's ended up in Sydney with half of Auckland, it feels like. So we lose our kids, we lose our
Mm.
connections. I want them here.
Mm. Mm.
Yeah. Selfishly.
Mm.
Yeah.
It may seem important. Yeah, well, it might seem obvious, but let's hear it from you. Why is it important to you that Labor wins the election this year?
I think it's absolutely critical that we win. I think we are in serious trouble if we don't, because the policies of this government have become more and more right wing and reactionary. And it is a bit of a tail wagging the dog, but National's not off on the hook on this one. They're letting this stuff happen. They have let a whole lot of policy go through that's really bad. And like one of those things as an employment lawyer I'd focus on is some of those rules around employment. So things like the contractor legislation. Like there was a reason why the Supreme Court found that Uber workers were contractors. It was because they didn't have a chance like a normal business to make a profit. And I know that law backwards. I took a lot of those cases. And to see the government reverse that. So we're looking at people in this area, lots of contractors, and they just won't have any security of employment. They won't have any savings. And as a result, we'll end up as taxpayers with all these people with no savings when they turn 65. Well, who do you think pays for it? And where's the money going? It's going straight off to big multinationals who don't want any rules and want to take the profit. So I think it is a really good example of what's wrong. I mean, economies are supposed to work for people, not the other way around.
Good point. Labor's campaign is centred on jobs, health, homes, and the cost of living. Is this message resonating?
I think it's what I see every day. Like I think about a lot of things and there's a lot of connections beyond that. And I obviously have portfolios like that. I have one that's about the prevention of sexual and family violence. And I have another one which is actually community and voluntary. So I see the impacts in those areas, but those are connected to those basic things. Like you need a decent way out of a violent marriage. You to be able to get out, you need a house. You need safe housing for your kids. If you don't provide affordable housing, that just isn't going to happen. And you're going to end up with kids traumatized, people in violent situations, higher homicide rates. It's that bad. And we've got a huge spike in sexual violence. This is dangerous stuff. And then we've got the community or voluntary sector. It's been mopping up for this government, and yet it's being treated like trash. Those organizations, they are amazing and they're full of amazing people and amazing energy. They need our love as a government, not what's going on.
Have you heard any stories from people in Mount Albert being affected by these kind of issues?
Absolutely. Like last night, I was at a meeting that was in the Wesley Community Centre, and these issues were coming up. So things like entrenched unemployment, not being able to get a job because you don't have experience and nobody will hire you, and it's like a vicious circle. How do you get the experience? It's depressing for people, and they're beautiful people. They are hard-working people, and they're being trashed. Like none of those people, if you're on a benefit because you can't get a job because actually we have a spike in unemployment, they're not giving you any sort of help in this government in your fuel costs. You've got to get your kids to school. It's not actually easy. You've got to go to that interview. It's the kinds of things where people are being punished for things that are absolutely beyond their control.
You hold
Another
the
issue.
prevention of family and sexual violence portfolio. Yeah.
Yes, I
Okay.
do. Yes, I was just going to say that I'd had
Sorry.
this stunning other example that I think you should know about, and that is that we had a post on butter. And I don't know if you know about this controversy, but there's an issue over American butter coming into the country, and it's way cheaper than New Zealand butter. It's still expensive, but it's way cheaper. I did this post on it, and a senior journalist picked it up and mocked me about how I was doing it because he said it was like I was a dictator and I didn't understand that the price of butter being high was good for New Zealand. Well, since then, there have been about 10 articles on butter. So I put one up yesterday or the day before on my Facebook feed. We're up to about 235,000 views. And people's comments are really interesting. They're all about people struggling and feeling locked out of the economy, like it's not working for them. And I think it's a really good example of what people are feeling around
Yeah.
here.
Oh, definitely. That's what I'm hearing, the same kind of thing. Now, you hold the Prevention of Family and Sexual Violence portfolio. What work have you been doing around that?
So I've actually provided my caucus and my party with a plan as to what we should be doing. And obviously that has to go through a process or it wouldn't be a democratic party. But when I picked up this portfolio, it was a little bit with a heavy heart. I'd done some family law. I knew how like traumatic this stuff was. But what I realized when I picked it up was that our rates of domestic violence and our issue with sexual violence, they are critical at the moment. They're terrible. They're terrible in terms of international standards. We should be totally ashamed. And we've also got this problem with the internet really sparking a whole new wave of sexual violence. And we have some new problems as well as some old ones we should have solved and we haven't. And shame on us. So I have built a portfolio plan around those things. And I'm looking at those basics we talked about, like, okay, how does someone get out of a violent relationship if they don't have a place to go? What do they do if they're scared that their pet is going to be hurt by their sadistic partner if they leave? Because those are the realities of people's lives. How do we get round and help some of the community organisations that have been doing this work heroically? How do we let them bring out the best in situations so people have more than one option? What do we do about our ethnic groups which work really differently? Have they got the kinds of choices they need in those situations? What do we do about the fact our parents have no idea what's going on the internet with their kids? What do we do about a new problem, which is actually really violent, rough sex, which is hurting a lot of people? And it's actually, people have no idea how dangerous what they're doing is. So there's a lot of problems that are actually needing addressing, and we have not been addressing them.
So National have made a number of changes when it comes to planning rules in Auckland. What are you hearing about those changes, and do you support them?
Well, this is a really interesting issue, and especially in my area, because it hits Mount Albert harder than pretty much anywhere else, because we have the train stations that are really important. So we have Morningside, Kingsland, Baldwin Ave, Mount Albert. These are all our train stations, and the proposal is to build up in those areas. And we have a whole lot of people with really mixed feelings about that. But I, for one, think it's incredibly important we build more houses. What I am actually appalled at is the way the government's gone about it. So at the present time, all these people put submissions in with their concerns, and the council was doing a good job of going through them. And then Chris Bishop came out with a different policy again, restricted to the number, but said, oh, we're going to have say as to where they go. Well, in an election year, giving David Seymour a veto over where the houses go, that to me, it's not okay. You can't have it both ways. I want more houses, but it better be fair. And then we've got issues in our area like stormwater. So we have to make sure that I advocate strongly that those problems are fixed and that people understand some of the solutions are ones that are new to them. So things like tall buildings are actually really good because they are much better for floodwater because they've got smaller roofs. So I've got a building in my area going in now. So by Morningside Station, it's going to have 1,000 it's about 500 homes. So I'm calculating 1,000 people in it. It's a much better build because it's a tall building and it's got lots of community space in it and, kind of shared spaces. So it's a really good solution. And I've got to convince and bring my community with me that that's a better result than a whole lot of spread little houses with little roofs causing more stormwater issues.
Yeah. Now, Mount Albert is an electorate with among the highest proportion of renters in New Zealand. Now, what work have you been doing in this space and what is Labour's vision?
All right, so I think rental is a hugely important part of things. First of all, this government stripped away a lot of the security that Labor had tried to give. And I think we need to give that security to renters. One of the ways we can do that, I just talked about the Morningside building, that's long-term rental. That is rental for 10 years or more. So when you move into that, say you haven't got the money, you've got kids, you haven't got the money, and you move into that, it means your kids know they're going to be going to the same school, and you can build a home. So I think long-term rental is incredibly important, and we did change the centre settings to encourage that. And so I'd like to see a lot more really good long-term rental built. But I also have something I'm doing personally. I've got a little bill in the biscuit tin, which is the one we can put personal bills in. And my bill is about having curtains in rentals because lots of people don't know, but the landlord doesn't have to put the curtains in. It's up to the tenant. Well, combine that with the fact you don't even have security when you move in. So you're the renter, you move in. You're supposed to put the curtains in to the house you might not actually be in a year. That's crazy. And it's really bad for energy bills if you don't have curtains. And it's bad for health if you don't have decent curtains. It causes real health issues. So my bill says that becomes something that the landlord has to do as part of warm, dry homes. So that's one contribution I'm making.
That's a good one. It seems batshit crazy, that
Yeah.
people have to buy the curtains.
Yeah.
How's your campaign been going so far this year? How has the campaign been going?
It feels great, I've got to say. I just love this stuff. I mean, I guess you're not a politician for no reason, right? You get into it. And I love that mode of just getting into talking at it's a more in the year before, people kind of don't want to talk to you in some ways because they're just getting on with their lives and it's a bit exhausting, all this electioneering. But in this period, they want to talk to me and it feels really good. I have always door knocked, but when I go to the doors now, I don't really even need to invite someone to a meeting or anything. They just want to talk to me and tell me what's going on and feel like that I'm listening. And I am. And I've really got into it. I really love it. So I'm doing a whole lot of community meetings. I've always done a lot of public meetings anyway. So they're used to that, but it's more that intimate stuff where you're talking to people at the doorstep.
What do you make of the government's changes to voter enrolment, which make it harder for people to vote? This is this a focus for your campaign at all?
Absolutely. It's probably the most scary thing at the moment is that you would take away people's right to vote in a time when they're used to voting because people are busy. They come up for air late. They don't know that they have to enroll and they move house. So if the poorer voters are renters, they're moving house and they're busy and they're doing two jobs. So it feels very cynical to do this to people. So one of the things that we're working on really hard, and I'm allowed to do this as an MP, as parliamentary service, is just getting people enrolled. Basically, I don't care who someone votes for, I care that they do vote, that they do participate. And to take away that right, it is absolutely horrible because what you're really doing is you're manipulating poverty.
That's right. So if you're out there listening to this and you're watching this, how can viewers and listeners actually get more involved in your campaign, Helen?
Well, they're welcome. The more the merrier. And we've got a great campaign team already. And, it's just, there's so much to do. I know some people don't like door knocking. It doesn't have to be door knocking. But door knocking actually is one of those things that, like me, you might grow to love because it's such a personal conversation and you get a lot out of it. But there's other things that we do as well. So we've got lots of jobs to do. And if people want to just work on enrollment, for example, because that's their jam, they can do that. They can have little cottage meetings with their friends and I'll come and I'll talk about it. There's a lot of people really upset about pay equity. Those are the sorts of issues. If you have got those issues and you want to change the government, we can work with you to talk about those issues and we can talk about them with you.
That's excellent. Hey, well, thank you very much for joining us all today. It's been quite insightful for us all to hear what's really going on for you in Mount Albert. And I'd like to wish you personally the very best for your campaign and let's change this government.
Thank you. Let's change this government.
Welcome to G News, the good news.